Hello and welcome to ILTV's Israel Daily. I'm Aaron Porras, and coming up in today's newscast, updates to Israeli COVID regulations as Omicron continues to spread. Meantime, another terrible explosion reported in Lebanon, over a dozen injured and at least one dead. And finally, Miss Universe 2021 beginning, but of course, not without its controversies. To begin tonight, the Omicron coronavirus variant continuing to terrify Israeli leadership. Authorities then announcing a new and extended list of restrictions. Prime Minister Naftali Bennett and Health Minister Nitzan Horowitz announcing this weekend that they'll be extending travel restrictions via Ben Gurion International Airport for another 10 days. So effective until December 22nd, the travel ban, with few exceptions, on non-Israeli passport holders holding up. And this on top of heightened COVID security in light of the Omicron variant. At least 55 cases of the variant now confirmed in the Holy Land. So all who arrive in Israel must still quarantine as well. Vaccinated Israelis for at least 3 days and unvaccinated Israelis for at least a week, followed by a negative PCR test. And further restrictions in discussion. Then likewise, the local Green Pass restrictions in public and in schools extended or revamped. Green Pass barcode use and enforcement set to get a boost, and the Green Classrooms model extended, but with the following changes. If there's a verified case of coronavirus in the class among the students, all students will undergo an additional PCR test on the 3rd of 7 days. If there are 2 verified cases or any suspected cases of Omicron, on the other hand, the Green Class model will not apply, and vaccinated students will be allowed to continue frontal learning while the unvaccinated learn via Zoom. Meantime, the final step in renewed efforts against the 5th wave of the virus still resting in vaccines. The government speaking with the heads of the Israeli HMOs regarding the yet unsatisfactory scope of the vaccination campaigns, particularly in the wake of 2 new studies, the first being on the consequences of long COVID in kids, or PIMS, pediatric inflammatory multisystem syndrome. The disease estimated to affect just 1 in every 3,500 COVID-infected kids, and it has a 1 to 2% fatality rate. But doctors and parents alike are warning to take the issue seriously.
These are healthy children who suddenly have all these symptoms that really influence their daily lives, and they struggle to go back. So what we see here in Schneider is definitely physical health that's very much influenced by this syndrome, and also mental problems such as anxiety and also PTSD-like symptoms.
He had a terrible rash all over his body, swollen eyes, red eyes. He was very weak. He didn't have an appetite. He didn't eat for a few days. He was crying a lot. He had pains in his legs, stomach pains. He couldn't go to the toilet.
The good thing is the children are recover much more than adults. Most of them had a very serious time, very bad condition, but most of them will recover.
And finally, the second study on the general efficacy of the vaccines against Omicron. The results showing that 2 shots of the Pfizer vaccine fail to neutralize the variant, while the booster is effective but less so. And health ministry officials therefore suggesting that a 4th dose may be ordered by as soon as next month, though the idea quickly losing popularity among the public. In other news, Israeli defense and security officials finishing their visit to the United States this week, and Defense Minister Benny Gantz and Mossad Chief David Barnea once again urging the Biden administration to pull away from negotiations with Iran. But beyond pressuring Washington, Gantz is saying that he's ordered the IDF to prepare for strikes against Iran. New reports suggesting that while Israel did consult with the U.S. before strikes earlier this year, Jerusalem increasingly worried that support will waver, especially with the United States and Israel divided over the strike's efficacy. So what will come of these disagreements? Joining me to discuss is expert on U.S.-Israel relations from Bar-Ilan University, Professor Eitan Gilboa. Professor, thanks again for joining us. Now, is Israel correct to be worried that the United States will no longer support them in future strikes against Iran?
Yes, Israel should be worried.
All right, now congratulations are again in order. Israeli athletes surprising the world at another international competition. This as 19-year-old Asaf Yassou, whose arms were amputated at the elbow when he was 13, kicking his path to a gold medal at the World Para-Taekwondo Championships held in Istanbul, Turkey. Yassou competing in the men's under 58 kilogram category and defeating Turkey's Alikan Özkan 57-42 in the final round. And speaking of his victory shortly thereafter, Yassou was saying that he still hasn't really absorbed the win, but is the happiest person for the path that he chose. Additionally, congratulated by the Israeli cabinet, Foreign Minister Yair Lapid calling Yassou a source of national pride and a reminder of how far willpower can take you. And to that end, while failing to qualify for Tokyo earlier this summer, Yassou now on track for the Paralympic Games in Paris in 2024.